So, you know this guy called Mario? He's an Italian plumber. Okay, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Obviously, you all know Mario. But do you know this guy called Sonic? Okay, but seriously though. Chances are, if you clicked on this video, I'm more than confident you've seen tons of Mario and Sonic videos where they're competing against each other. Whether it's seeing who has the better video games, who would win in a race, or just who is more capable of beating the crap out of the other. What if I told you that in this video, I'm going to be putting these two characters in a contest that they have never competed at before. Not in the history of the internet. Not in the history of video games. Not in the history of the universe. I think. Probably. And that incredible contest is parkour. Okay, wait. Before you leave the video, I promise this is interesting. Assuming you've played both Mario and Sonic games, then I'm sure that you know that Mario and Sonic are platformers. It's where they started their video game history. It's what their most popular and well-known video games are about. Mario and Sonic platforming. Both these characters practically made the genre, which is why it's actually really surprising that no one has ever talked about, as far as I know, which one of these two would win in a platforming obstacle course until today. Welcome everyone to another episode of Olympic Fiction, the series where we take characters all throughout fiction and put them in competitions to see who is the best of the best. Now, if you're new, don't worry, the rules of this episode are going to be a little different, as are most of my episodes, but especially different for this episode because I have created an obstacle course that is a combination of both Mario and Sonic, or more specifically, Level 1-1 and Green Hill Zone, where both our competitors will try to get to the finish line as fast as they can. Now, full disclaimer, I'm not an animator. There's not going to be an animation or anything like that. This is just a hypothetical conversation where we discuss hypothetical characters competing in a hypothetical contest. Hypothetically speaking. But I did make some art, so I hope you like that. Now, to figure this out, we're going to have to look through all of the equipment and abilities to see who has the best chance of winning this contest. And when I say equipment, I'm referring to power-ups. Because yes, both Mario and Sonic both have power-ups. But before we get into Sonic's power-ups and abilities, there's one thing I need to address. I'm sure a lot of you are probably thinking, isn't this entire contest basically just a race? And to that, I say no. Ish. I say no-ish. Okay, look. This obstacle course will obviously require speed, which does lead heavily in Sonic's favor. But it will also require challenging platforming, movement, and, more specifically, jumping, which leads heavily in Mario's favor, which is why we're going to have to look deeper than just Sonic's speed and Mario's jumping. So, we're going to have to look at Mario and Sonic's power-ups. And to answer the big question, yes, Sonic has power-ups, and a lot more than you might think, and it's throughout multiple Sonic games too. Sure, Mario still has more power-ups, I'm sure of it, but after I discovered how many Sonic power-ups there were, I realized these power-ups were going to be the entirety of this debate. And things do get interesting. Okay, so first we have the basic power-ups that really only help boost Mario and Sonic a little bit, like Mario's mushrooms, which can give Mario extra hits and can sometimes make him jump higher depending on which mushrooms he takes. And for Sonic, there are his speed shoes. Not the shoes that he wears all the time, but an actual power-up that gives him faster shoes that make him go faster. Which does sound pretty useful, but yet again, this is Sonic. Speed is a category he doesn't really need helping at. It's more of the complex and tight platforming that he struggles with, so not the most helpful power-up in this situation. And same thing with Mario's mushrooms. Jumping is, again, an aspect that Mario is pretty good at already, so the mushrooms are not the most useful, again, in this situation. So we're going to have to look deeper. And here's where we get into Sonic's more obscure power-ups, most of which, before making this video, I had no idea existed, like Sonic's Bubble Shield, Lightning Shield, and Fire Shield, which all have different ranges of usefulness. The Bubble Shield in this situation is kind of useless, since this is not an underwater level, so moving on. But the Lightning and Fire Shields, those are a lot more useful, with the Lightning Shield giving Sonic a double jump, and the Fire Shield giving Sonic a dash, which are two very useful power-ups, especially since Mario, weirdly enough, doesn't have many power-ups that let him dash around, but he does have plenty of very useful jumping abilities, whether it's his wall jump, triple jump, backwards jump, super jump, or whatever kind of jump you can think of. Mario has it. Even for Sonic's more complex stages, Mario still has kind of a lead with platforming. The closest thing Sonic has to compete with Mario's jumping skills is the orange rocket wisp, which does let Sonic jump high in the air, although it's so situational, I generally don't think it will help Sonic in any way in this debate. But it does lead me to mention the wisps. If you don't know what the wisps are in Sonic's universe, the wisps are aliens who help Sonic by giving him special abilities that basically are the equivalent of power-ups in Sonic Colors. And there are quite a number of useful wisps. There's the Scion Laser, which gives Sonic a very fast dash, the Yellow Drill, which lets Sonic drill through the ground, also very fast. The Pink Spike lets Sonic climb on walls and ceilings at, again, a very fast rate. Then there are the wisps that focus less on speed. There's the Green Hover, which lets Sonic hover around obstacles, and the Jade Ghost, which gives Sonic the ability to phase through walls, which is very impressive. But, unsurprisingly, Mario is actually able to match pretty much all of these abilities. Mario has a drill mushroom that lets him drill underground and in walls and ceilings. Not as fast as Sonic, but Mario does have more control. There's the Boom Mushroom that lets Mario hover around and phase through walls. And although Mario doesn't have many power-ups that let him go fast, he does have more unique power-ups, like the Rock Mushroom that lets him bulldoze through pretty much any object, or the Cloud Mushroom, which lets him create platforms that he can just jump off of whenever he wants. So yeah, both these characters have tons of power-ups, and we can go back and forth all day. It's hard to say which one of these characters would have the best chance of winning this race. Side note, in research for this video, I discovered that Sonic has a power-up in Sonic 06 that basically functions just like an Ender Pearl. There's no practical point into mentioning this, but I just had to. So yeah, no matter how far I looked, I just couldn't find any power-ups that either of these characters had that the other character didn't also have. Surprisingly enough, everywhere I looked, they were perfectly matched. Even with the most obscure Mario and Sonic power-ups, like Sonic's power-up from Sonic 06 that literally slows down time, which you think would completely win this entire debate, until I realized this was also redundant because Mario can just straight up freeze time in Super Mario Bros. 2 with the clock power-up. So yeah, no matter where I looked, no matter what I dug up, I generally could not figure out who would win in this contest. Generally, this is one of my closest debates. The entire time while I was researching this, I generally could not land on a single one of these characters who I thought would win. And as I was coming to an end of all my research, it started to seem hopeless. Until I realized I was being an idiot. Yeah, so apparently, somehow I completely managed to miss probably the most iconic Sonic power-up in the history of all things Sonic. Supersonic and hypersonic, but more on that later. This completely changes just about everything. You see, the main problem with Sonic winning in this contest has been that Sonic is not the best when it comes to obstacles and platforming. Super fast movement, he nails it. Slow and complex platforming, he struggles a little bit, especially in comparison to Mario, who excels at it. Sonic just isn't able to do complex and slow platforming as well as Mario. But with Supersonic, it kind of doesn't matter anymore. Supersonic has the power to, fly, which is really overpowered in platformers. And yes, I know Mario has loads of abilities to fly as well, like the Feather Cape or the Red Star, but none of these power-ups have ever shown to go at any sort of speed anywhere close to Supersonic, let alone Hypersonic. The only debate I can see for Mario left is, in most 2D platformers, Supersonic, weirdly enough, isn't shown flying. He hovers above the ground, but that's just it. He still just kind of hovers over the ground at very fast speeds, but he never directly just flies up in the air freely, which I was tempted to use as an excuse to say Sonic wouldn't be able to fly, but I know that's more of just how the 2D Sonic games function and work. In 3D Sonic games and pretty much any other Sonic media, Supersonic is always able to fly. It doesn't happen too often in 2D Sonic games. It still does happen, like in boss fights where Sonic flies through space. And when you include other supersonic forms that somehow go even faster, yeah. If they were racing on an obstacle course that had a ceiling or wasn't so open, then this wouldn't be too much of a problem. But both Green Hill Zone and 1-1 are pretty open when it comes to the air. So, unfortunately, yeah, Sonic, with the Chaos Emeralds, would dominate this competition. If he didn't have them, honestly, I'm not entirely sure if he would win. But I can safely say, as very close and very interesting as this debate was to research, I can fully confirm, without a doubt, 100% sure, the winner of this episode of Olympic Fiction is none other than the Blue Blur Sonic the Hedgehog. And he'll be taking home the gold in this event.